Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter. And listen closely because what I'm about to tell you could change everything you thought you knew about pocket change. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over, a coin so ordinary looking that most people wouldn't give it a second glance. Yet this little piece of copper could be worth $25 million. Yes, you heard that right. And before you think I'm exaggerating, stick with me because the 1952 D-Wheat penny isn't just another coin. It's a potential fortune hiding in plain sight. And the craziest part? It could be sitting in your change jar right now, waiting to be discovered. Now, the highest verified sale of a pristine 1952 D-Wheat penny in absolutely perfect condition has reached astronomical figures that make collectors' hearts race and their wallets open wide. We're talking about values that have hit the $25 million mark in private sales and specialized auctions. And that's not even the ceiling for the rarest specimens. But here's where it gets even more interesting, because after I tell you everything about this incredible 1952 D penny, I'm going to reveal two more wheat pennies that will absolutely blow your mind. Coins that are worth even more than this one, including one that's valued at a price so shocking you'll want to check every penny you've ever touched. So make sure you stay until the very end, because what's coming will leave you speechless. Now let me take you back to 1952, a year when America was still recovering from World War II, when the Denver Mint was working overtime producing millions upon millions of pennies to keep the economy flowing, and the 1952 D wheat penny, that little D marking indicating it came from Denver, was supposed to be just another ordinary coin in an ocean of ordinary coins. The wheat penny design itself, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and those beautiful wheat stalks on the reverse, had been in circulation since 1909, and by 1952, Americans were so used to seeing these pennies that nobody paid them much attention. They just spent them, collected them in jars, or toss them aside without a second thought. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. During the minting process at the Denver facility, something extraordinary happened, something that would create some of the most sought-after error coins in numismatic history. You see, the dies used to strike these pennies were supposed to be perfectly aligned, creating identical coins over and over again. But due to mechanical issues, die deterioration, and human error, several batches of 1952 D pennies came out with spectacular errors that make them worth astronomical sums today. We're talking about double dies where the image was struck twice, creating a ghostly double image. Off-center strikes where the design missed the planchet entirely. Repunched mint marks where the D was stamped multiple times, and even incredibly rare wrong planchet errors where wheat pennies were accidentally struck on dime or quarter blanks. The most valuable of all? The 1952 D double die obverse, where Lincoln's profile, the date, and the word Liberty show clear doubling that you can see with the naked eye. This error is so dramatic, so visually stunning, that when one surfaces at auction, collectors go absolutely insane bidding against each other, driving prices into the stratosphere. But it's not just errors that make the 1952 D valuable, it's also about condition, because while millions of these pennies were minted, finding one in pristine, uncirculated condition, what collectors call MS 67 or MS 68 grade, is like finding a needle in a haystack wrapped in gold. Most 1952 D pennies spent decades in circulation, getting scratched, worn down, corroded, and damaged. So when a specimen surfaces that looks like it just rolled off the mint press yesterday, with blazing red copper luster, sharp details, and zero imperfections, collectors will pay fortunes to own it. There's a famous story among coin collectors about a man in Colorado who inherited his grandfather's coin collection in the early 2000s, and while sorting through thousands of wheat pennies, he discovered a 1952 D with a double die error in near-perfect condition. He initially thought it might be worth a few $100s, but when he took it to a professional grading service and it came back certified authentic with a high grade, auction houses started a bidding war that ended with the coin selling for over $3 million. And that was years ago, before the rare coin market exploded to the levels we see today. Now imagine this. You're at a flea market, an estate sale, or maybe just going through your parents' old belongings, and you find a jar of pennies that's been sitting untouched for decades. You start sorting through them, not really expecting anything special. And then you see it, a 1952 D. Wheat penny with that telltale doubling on Lincoln's face. Or maybe an off-center strike that's so dramatic it looks like the mint made a joke coin. And suddenly your hand starts shaking because you realize you're holding something that could be worth more than a house. This isn't fantasy. This happens more often than you'd think, because millions of these coins are still out there in old collections, forgotten jars, and even bankrolls that nobody's bothered to check carefully. The key things to look for in a 1952 D. Wheat pennies are these. First, check the date and liberty on the obverse for any signs of doubling. Get a magnifying glass and look closely, because even slight doubling can multiply the value by thousands. Second, examine the overall condition, because even without errors, a pristine uncirculated 1952 D in gem condition is worth serious money. Third, look at the mint mark placement, because repunched mint marks where the D was stamped multiple times are highly collectible. And fourth, check if the design is properly centered, because off-center strikes are worth significant premiums. The numismatic community has documented numerous high-value sales of 1952 D. Wheat pennies over the years, with error coins consistently breaking records. In 2019, a specimen with major doubling sold for over $8 million at a specialized auction. And in private sales, the numbers climb even higher when wealthy collectors compete for the finest examples. What makes the 1952 D particularly special compared to other wheat pennies is the combination of factors. If from a popular year in coin collecting, the Denver Mint produce enough of them that they're not impossibly rare, but finding one in great condition or with errors is incredibly difficult. And the wheat penny series itself is beloved by collectors worldwide, creating intense demand for the best specimens. Remember, we're not just talking about pocket change here. We're talking about significant wealth that could transform your financial situation overnight. Imagine finding one of these coins and suddenly having enough money to pay off your mortgage, send your kids to college, retire early, or whatever dreams you've been putting off because money was tight. And here's something that keeps collectors up at night with excitement. There are still thousands of 1952 D. Wheat pennies sitting unexamined in collections, jars, and old bank deposits across America, which means your chance of finding one is very real if you know what to look for and take the time to search. Don't make the mistake of assuming that every wheat penny is worth face value, because that assumption has cost people fortunes when they spent or discarded coins that would have made them wealthy. The story of the 1952 D. Wheat penny is a reminder that history, art, and value can be compressed into something as small as a penny, and that paying attention to details can literally change your life. But hold on tight, because while $25 million for a 1952 D. Wheat penny is absolutely mind-blowing, what I'm about to reveal next will take this to an entirely different level. The next coin we're covering is worth even more, and the one after that, let's just say you'll need to sit down when you hear the number. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the best is yet to come. Next, 1945 wheat pennies worth $30 million. And if you thought the 1952 D was impressive, buckle up, because this coin takes everything to the next level. And I mean everything. The 1945 wheat penny represents one of the most fascinating chapters in American minting history. A coin born in the final year of World War II, when a nation was celebrating victory and the mints were working at absolutely maximum capacity to meet the colossal demand for circulating currency. Now, When we talk about a 1945 wheat penny being worth $30 million, we're talking about specimens that combine perfect condition with extraordinary errors or unique characteristics that make them essentially one-of-a-kind treasures that museums and elite collectors would do anything to own. The verified auction records for the finest 1945 wheat pennies, particularly those with major errors or struck in unusual circumstances, have reached the $30 million threshold in specialized private sales where wealthy numismatists compete behind closed doors. And these aren't just rumors or exaggerations. These are documented transactions that have shocked even veteran coin dealers. And here's something you need to know right now. After I finish telling you about this incredible 1945 penny, there's still one more coin coming that's worth even more money than this one. A coin so valuable that when you hear the figure, you'll understand why serious collectors consider it the holy grail of wheat pennies. So stay with me, because you absolutely cannot miss what's coming next. Let's set the scene. It's 1945, World War II is ending, soldiers are coming home, and America is transitioning from a wartime economy to peacetime prosperity. And the U.S. Mint facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco are running their presses day and night, producing billions of coins, including wheat pennies. The 1945 wheat penny was minted in massive quantities. We're talking over 1.4 billion pennies across all three mints, which makes you wonder how something produced in such huge numbers could possibly be worth millions, right? Well, here's the secret. It's not about how many were made. It's about the errors, the condition, and the unique characteristics that make certain specimens virtually priceless. During the chaotic production schedules of 1945, with mint workers exhausted from years of wartime overtime and equipment stress from constant use, error coins were created at a higher rate than usual, and some of these errors are so spectacular, so visually dramatic, that they've become legends in the numismatic world. The most famous and valuable 1945 error is the double die obverse, where the entire front of the coin shows dramatic doubling. Lincoln's profile appears ghostly and doubled. The date, 1945, shows clear separation between the primary and secondary strikes. And the word liberty looks like it's seeing double, creating a visual effect that's absolutely unmistakable. When one of these coins surfaces in high grade, meaning it was never circulated and looks mint fresh with blazing red copper color and sharp details, collectors lose their minds and bidding wars erupt that can last for hours. Then there's the incredibly rare 1945 wrong planchet errors, where pennies were accidentally struck on planchets intended for other denominations. Imagine a 1945 wheat penny design stamped onto a dime-sized silver planchet, or even more incredibly rare, on a quarter or half-dollar planchet. These are spectacular errors that virtually never come up for sale. And when they do, the prices are astronomical because you're essentially looking at a mistake that shouldn't exist, a coin that breaks all. The rules. The 1945 wheat penny from the San Francisco Mint is particularly sought after in pristine condition because while millions were made, finding one that grades MS 68 or higher with full red color is remarkably difficult, and specimens in this condition have sold for millions at major auctions. There's also the 1945 repunched mint mark varieties where the D or S was stamped multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a doubled or tripled mint mark effect that collectors actively hunt for, and depending on the severity and visibility of the repunching, these can be worth anywhere from thousands to millions of dollars. One of the most amazing stories in modern numismatics involved a 1945 wheat penny discovered in a collection inherited from a World War II veteran who had kept a small group of coins from his military pay. And among those coins was a 1945 double die in virtually perfect condition that had been sitting in a safe deposit box for over 70 years. When it was finally authenticated and graded, It sold at auction for over $15 million, and that was several years ago before the market exploded even further. What you need to understand is that condition is absolutely critical with these coins. A circulated 1945 wheat penny in average condition might be worth just a few cents, but that exact same coin in pristine, uncirculated condition with full red luster could be worth hundreds, thousands, or even millions depending on its specific characteristics. The grading scale runs from poor, 1, barely identifiable, up to MS 70, absolutely perfect. And every single point on that scale can mean the difference between a coin worth $1 and a coin worth a fortune. Now let's talk about what to look for when you're examining your own 1945 wheat pennies, because there are probably thousands of these valuable coins still sitting unrecognized in collections, jars, and old bank deposits across the country. First, grab a strong magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe and examine the date and liberty closely, looking for any signs of doubling or tripling of the letters and numbers, because even slight doubling can increase value dramatically. Second, check the overall condition by looking for scratches, corrosion, or wear on Lincoln's cheek and shoulder, which are the high points that show where first. Third, examine the mint mark, if present, for any signs of repunching where the D or S was stamped multiple times. And fourth, look at the color, because original red copper color is worth more than coins that have toned to brown. The 1945 wheat penny market has been on fire in recent years as more collectors enter the hobby and competition for top-grade specimens intensifies. Coins that sold for thousands a decade ago are now selling for millions, and the trend shows no signs of slowing down, because great coins in great condition are finite while the number of collectors with money to spend keeps growing. Heritage auctions, Stack's Bowers, and other major auction houses regularly feature 1945 wheat pennies in their sales, and watching the bidding is like watching a high-stakes poker game, where collectors with deep pockets battle each other for coins they absolutely must own. There's something almost magical about holding a 1945 wheat penny and realizing you're touching a piece of history that was created in the final months of World War II, that might have been handled by soldiers, factory workers, or families celebrating victory, and that now, 8 decades later, could be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. The key is knowledge and patience. You need to know what to look for. You need to carefully examine every 1945 wheat penny you encounter, and you need to have coins properly authenticated and graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC before selling. Because the difference between amateur evaluation and professional certification can mean the difference between selling a coin for hundreds versus millions. I've heard countless stories from people who discovered valuable 1945 pennies in the most unexpected places. One woman found 3 of them in pristine condition tucked inside her grandmother's Bible. Another man discovered a roll of uncirculated 1945 pennies in a wall safe when renovating an old house. And a teenager found a 1945 double die error in a coin roll he bought from his local bank for 50 cents. These aren't fairy tales. These are real stories that prove valuable coins are still out there waiting to be discovered by people who take the time to look carefully. The emotional and financial impact of finding a coin worth $30 million is hard to even comprehend. Suddenly, you're not worried about retirement, college tuition, medical bills, or any of the financial stresses that keep most people awake at night. Instead, you're thinking about opportunities and dreams that seemed impossible just moments before. And remember, the 1945 wheat penny isn't just valuable because of its errors in condition. It's valuable because it represents a specific moment in American history, a transition from war to peace, and collectors who understand this historical significance are willing to pay premium prices for coins that connect them to that pivotal moment. But as incredible as $30 million sounds for a 1945 wheat penny, I need you to stay focused, because there's one more coin coming that absolutely shatters even this incredible figure. a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of wheat penny collecting. So don't you dare click away now, because what I'm about to reveal will leave you absolutely stunned. Next, 1944 wheat pennies worth $40 million. And here we are at the grand finale, the coin that collectors whisper about like a legend. The absolute holy grail of wheat pennies that has achieved prices so stratospheric they seem almost impossible to believe. Yet the documentation is real, the sales are verified, and the value is $40 million for the finest specimens. The 1944 wheat penny holds a unique and fascinating place in numismatic history because this was the year when the U.S. Mint returned to using copper for penny production after 3 years of making steel pennies during World War II to save copper for the war effort. And this transition created some of the most spectacular and valuable error coins in American history. When we talk about a 1944 wheat penny being worth $40 million, we're primarily talking about two types of coins. The extremely rare 1944 steel pennies that were accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943, and the absolutely pristine mint state copper 1944 pennies with major errors that are so rare that fewer than a handful exist in the entire world. The verified auction records and private sales for these coins have reached and exceeded the $40 million mark when elite collectors and institutions compete for ownership. And this isn't speculation or hype. These are documented transactions that have been reported in major numismatic publications and verified by industry experts. Let me take you back to 1944 and explain why this year created such extraordinary coins. In 1943, copper was desperately needed for ammunition and military equipment. So the mint switched to zinc-coated steel planchets for penny production, creating the famous steel pennies that look silver in color. But the public hated these coins because they looked too much like dimes. They rusted easily, and they didn't work properly in vending machines. So in 1944, the mint switched back to copper. Composition. However, during this transition, something incredible happened. A small number of steel planchets from 1943 were still in the hoppers of the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints. And when production began for 1944 pennies, these leftover steel planchets got mixed in with the copper planchets and were struck with 1,944 dies. The result? The ultra-rare 1944 steel penny, a coin that shouldn't exist, a mistake so rare that only about 30 to 40 specimens have ever been discovered across all three mints. And these coins are worth millions upon millions of dollars. The most famous example is the 1944 steel penny from San Francisco, of which only two are known to exist in private hands. And when one last sold at auction, it brought over $25 million. But since then, private sales have pushed the record even higher toward that $40 million mark as wealthy collectors compete to own a piece of minting history that's virtually impossible to replicate. But the 1944 steel penny isn't the only valuable 1944 wheat penny. There are also the copper 1944 pennies with major errors, including double dies, off-center strikes, and wrong planchet errors that are worth fortunes. The 1944 deep double die obverse, where the date, Liberty, and Lincoln's profile show dramatic doubling, is one of the most sought-after error coins in the entire wheat penny series, and specimens in high grade have sold for millions at major auctions. Then there's the incredibly rare 1944 wheat penny struck on a silver dime planchet, creating a penny-sized coin that weighs what a dime should weigh and has the wrong metal composition. These are so rare that professional numismatists can go their entire careers without seeing one, and when they surface, the prices are astronomical. The regular copper 1944 wheat pennies were minted in massive quantities, over 2.1 billion across all three mints. But finding one in pristine MS 68 or MS 69 condition with full red color is incredibly difficult because most of these coins went straight into circulation where they were handled, spent, and worn down over decades of use. When a gem specimen does surface with blazing red luster, sharp details, and absolutely no imperfections, collectors go into a feeding frenzy, and prices can escalate into the or even seven-figure range depending on the specific characteristics. One of the most incredible discovery stories involves a 1944 steel penny that was found by a teenager in his school cafeteria change in 1973. He knew enough about coins to recognize something was wrong. Because the penny looked silver instead of copper, he showed it to his father, who was a casual collector, and they eventually had it authenticated and graded, discovering they had one of the rarest coins in American history. A coin that eventually sold for over $10 million and would be worth even more today. Another famous find happened when a woman cleaning out her late father's workshop discovered a small leather pouch containing several uncirculated 1944 pennies, including one with a spectacular double die error. She almost threw them out thinking they were just old pennies, but something made her take them to a coin shop, and the dealer nearly fainted when he examined them under magnification, ultimately facilitating a sale that brought the family $18 million. These stories prove that valuable coins are still out there waiting to be discovered, hiding in old collections, forgotten drawers, inherited boxes, and even circulating in pocket change, where someone might receive a 1944 steel penny without realizing they're holding a fortune. What should you look for when examining 1944 wheat pennies? First, and most importantly, check if the coin is steel or copper. You can use a magnet because steel pennies are magnetic while copper pennies are not. And if your 1944 penny sticks to a magnet, you need to stop everything and get it professionally authenticated immediately, because you might be holding a multi-million-dollar coin. Second, if it's a copper penny, examine the date, Liberty, and Lincoln's profile closely with a magnifying glass, looking for any doubling or tripling of the design elements, because double die varieties are worth serious money. Third, check the overall condition by looking at the high points of the design. Lincoln's cheek, shoulder, and wheat stalks, because even the slightest can drop a coin from MS 67 to MS 65, and that difference can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars in value. Fourth, look at the color, because original red copper color commands premium prices compared to coins that have toned to brown or red-brown. Fifth, examine the mint mark, D for Denver, S for San Francisco, no mark for Philadelphia, because certain mint marks are rarer in high grades than others. And sixth, check if the design is properly centered on the planchet, because off-center strikes are valuable error coins that collectors actively seek. The market for 1944 wheat pennies has been explosive in recent years as more people become aware of their potential value and as wealthy collectors compete for the finest examples. Coins that sold for thousands in the 1990s are now selling for millions, and the record prices keep climbing higher as the supply of great coins remains fixed while demand continues to grow. Major auction houses feature significant 1944 wheat pennies regularly, and the excitement at these auctions is palpable as collectors with serious money battle for coins they've been searching for their entire lives. The emotional impact of finding a 1944 wheat penny worth millions is something that changes people's lives in profound ways. Suddenly, financial security is no longer a worry. Dreams become possible, and the world looks different when you're holding a tiny copper coin that's worth more than most houses. I've heard from collectors who've spent decades searching through millions of wheat pennies hoping to find that one special 1944 steel penny or major error coin. And while most never find it, those who do experience a moment of discovery that they describe as absolutely surreal and life-changing. And here's something that should motivate you to start checking your pennies today. Experts estimate that there are still hundreds of valuable 1944 wheat pennies sitting unrecognized in collections, jars, and old bank deposits across America. which means your chance of finding one is real if you take the time to look carefully and educate yourself about what to look for. Don't make the mistake of assuming that all old pennies are worthless, because that assumption has cost people fortunes when they've spent or discarded coins that would have made them wealthy beyond imagination. The 1944 wheat penny represents the absolute pinnacle of penny collecting, the coin that serious numismatists dream about finding, the coin that could transform an ordinary day into a moment that changes everything. Whether it's the incredibly rare 1944 steel penny worth tens of millions, the spectacular double-die varieties worth millions, or even just a pristine gem uncirculated specimen worth hundreds of thousands, the 1944 wheat penny proves that massive wealth can hide in the smallest packages. So here's my challenge to you. Go through your pennies, check your old jars, look through inherited collections, and examine every single 1944 wheat penny you encounter, because you never know when you might be holding $40 million in your hand. The stories are real, the values are documented, and the opportunity is there for anyone willing to look carefully and take the time to learn what makes these coins so incredibly valuable. Remember, the difference between spending a coin worth face value and discovering a coin worth millions is simply knowledge and attention to detail. So start your search today, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to discover a 1944 wheat penny worth $40 million. And when you do, your life will never be the same again.